Hello folks, this is going to be an InkDependence.com brief video review and water drop test of Franklin-Christoph's Black Magic writing fluid. This is just an ink. Writing fluid makes it sound very classy, but this is the most controversial of the Franklin-Christoph writing fluids. I've already done 3 of them on the blog. 3? Yeah, this will be number 4. I have 5 total. I've got Deep Purple sitting over here just ready to go. But Black Magic has been sort of lambasted on some other blogs for being prone to bleed through and spread and feather and all sorts of things we generally don't like in inks. But one thing that the Black Magic does do, magically, is dry almost instantly, even on Rhodia paper. It'll come in this nice glass bottle, just like the rest of them, so that's nice. There you can't see the characteristic sort of swoops that you'll see on the other bottles, probably because they would be black. Maybe they're there and we just can't see them, I don't know. But let's get to talking about this ink. When I first used this ink, I used it in my Lambatau pocket pen, which is this little guy. It's kind of an adorable little pen. You can see the paint chipped off there a little bit. I have a silver one somewhere, but this is my black one. And you can see it has a really fine nib. There's no sizes on these. It is a partially hooded nib and such, but it is very fine. But you can see it's not nearly as fine as the extra fine nib that I got from Franklin-Christoph. I have it sitting around here somewhere. Is this it? This is it. I've taken it off the pen to check another ink, and this is a really, really fine nib. In fact, it's a little too fine for me most of the time, but it works pretty well with this ink. You can see it's the second line right here. This one right here. It's much finer than Lambatau pocket pens for some reason. I guess this isn't really a fine. Maybe it's a regular fine and not an extra fine. I don't know. It's hard to say without actually having a size on the nib. But this is a lubricated ink, I think. It feels very lubricated to my fingers. It's got a pretty wet flow, and it bleeds even on Rhodia. You can see that it bleeds through here. You can see with the pocket pen, it bleeds through up here, and the rest of the text is pocket pen. Here, this line is with the extra fine nib on the Franklin-Christoph pen. And you can see a few dots coming through, that sort of thing. It's got some dotting, a bit of ghosting, but not really bleeding through in a significant sense. Now the swatch, bam, look at that. It bled all the way through. It looks pretty much the same on both sides. And that's on Rhodia, which is pretty hard to bleed through. So I say here that it bleeds through on everything, and that's not actually true. I tested it on some other things. I've got this paper that I got from the Anderson Pen Company. This is 28-pound paper, which is pretty thick. It's very smooth paper, and it doesn't really bleed through on here. You can see, again, a few dots, a little bit of ghosting, but no real bleed. So it will work on there. That's one option. Get yourself some good paper. The other option is use a really fine nib, and it works out pretty well too. Let's see, I've got the other one. This is a notebook that Scott gave me at Franklin-Christoph, just to try out because I didn't have any of their paper. You can see their paper has a bit of an off-white cast. It's kind of like a very, very light maroon. But you can see it also doesn't bleed through here. This is 90 GSM paper, which is about 60 pounds. Depending on, well, 60.8 according to my calculator online. So on here it also doesn't bleed through, which you'd kind of expect since it's so thick. I guess you can sort of see where I wrote, but I wouldn't call that bleed. I'd go ahead and use both sides. So if you use Franklin-Christoph paper, a Franklin-Christoph extra fine nib, or maybe even some of their others, you can totally use Black Magic. Now this is going to be great for lefties, it's going to be great for people who write very quickly, it's going to be great for people who prefer an extra fine nib. I know you're out there. I've only got the one that I got from Franklin-Christoph for grins, because I've never tried real extra fine nibs before, but they're not really for me. I like big broad nibs. So let's try out how this does with water. I really don't have any idea how it's going to work. It'll probably stick around. I imagine it's pretty water resistant since it soaks right into the paper and, well, right through the paper a lot of times. Alright, so you can see a little fuzziness around the edges of the lines there. I'm going to go ahead and let it sit just a sec. It's not going to really go through this Rhodia paper, so I'm not worried about it sinking through. So let's see. Swipe it away here. And, nope. Yeah, there's one little line. Oh no, that's one of my cat's hairs. You're also supposed to see a cat hair in some of my stuff. Alright, yeah, it didn't really move. You can see a little bit, I guess, of gray tinge, perhaps. Let me get my iPad to focus right. There we go. No, still looks pretty good. Well, you do see a little bit of feathering. It did push through a little bit on the bag. That's no big deal. It's kind of what it looked like before. Just got a little wet. So, dries almost instantly. is waterproof, maybe? At least very resistant. It's been sitting on this paper for like a week or something, but not very long. So, check out this ink. It's pretty good if you're looking for something that dries very quickly. If you're looking for something that's going to be water resistant, if you write quickly. Now, if you're like me and sometimes you forget what you're doing in the middle of a word and just leave your nib sitting there, yeah, it's going to bleed through. If you use office grade paper, yeah, it's going to bleed right through that stuff, like nobody's business. In fact, it does kind of bleed through Rhodia, but Rhodia is not the only paper out there. So try out your options, get some black magic if that's your thing, and I'll see you on Ink Dependence later on.